So I'm continuing on with my oil painting journey, and transitioning into oil painting has been really challenging. Often when painters begin an oil painting, they start the painting with what is called a grisaille, which is basically just a painting in like burnt umber or raw sienna, a neutral sort of brown in between the cool and warm spectrum. This is the part of oil painting that I have always loved. Whenever I see people beginning a painting and you see the very initial stages of them blocking in that brown color, I have just always loved that so much, just because it's so like, it's warm, but it's also monotone. Doing these grisaille underpaintings has been a really good mix between oil painting and charcoal drawing, especially because I'm doing it monochromatic, so I'm just using one tone. So these paintings are done completely just in burnt umber. Also, just a reminder that I have reduced all of my online courses to $49. One is how to draw a tiger masterpiece, and the other is the ultimate charcoal techniques course. So if you're looking to learn how to use charcoal, these are great for beginners or even advanced students. I feel like anyone from any level could get something from these courses. So if you're interested in learning how to either draw a tiger or how to use charcoal in general, I have 2 online courses, how to draw a tiger masterpiece and the ultimate charcoal techniques course, both for $49 each. So if you're interested in learning how to draw, they are a great place to start. You guys love it. I just wanted to make them super accessible for you guys, and really thank you for coming along this journey with me. As I was editing this footage together, I was noticing how long it was taking me to actually get into the artwork, and it felt like the beginning of this artwork was almost longer than the actual making of the artwork, which is not true. The actual artwork takes a very long time, and I have really trimmed it down now and taken out a lot of shots, but it really just got me thinking about how important the initial planning stages and conception of your artwork are, and I thought that this could be really valuable for you, because one of the hardest parts of being an artist and creating artworks in general is starting. It is so hard sometimes to just pick up the pencil, pick up the paintbrush, or whatever your medium is. It's so hard sometimes to just start, and these are often things that I do without thinking about it. When I was writing down my ideas around preparation, it reminded me of one of my favorite quotes by Abraham Lincoln, and he said, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." And I just think that's so interesting, because you really can't get anywhere without a sharp axe. And in terms of how that translates into an artwork, I just feel like if you don't have a clear vision of where you're going and what you want to achieve and some clear inspiration and ideas, I feel like the artwork, in my opinion, it never really flows, and I never ever go into an artwork without a clear end goal in mind. The first essential thing to think about before you start any artwork is obviously inspiration. This should come naturally, but if you are feeling uninspired, then it is probably a good indicator that you are burnt out and you need a break. After that, I like to go to galleries, read about my favorite artists and the struggles they had. I try to experience new things and immerse myself in history and culture. And in terms of inspiration as well, I find that it doesn't really come to me if I'm doing nothing either. That idea is accompanied by another one of my favorite quotes by Pablo Picasso. I always repeat this quote, and the art store that I go to actually prints this quote at the bottom of every receipt, which I think is so poetic and so beautiful. But Pablo Picasso said, "Inspiration exists, but it must find you working." And it's so true, because I will be the most inspired when I'm researching and delving into history and culture, or talking to people and hearing their stories and all of those kind of things. The second essential thing to think about before you start any artwork is research. I always like to think about how I'm going to use the medium. I think it's so important to learn the intricacies of your medium and learn the ins and outs of the limitations of how far it will go, and other artists are so generous in sharing what worked for them and what didn't work for them, and that can save you so much time, but also it can help you think about how you can use your medium and your tools and your references in new ways. You should experiment, write it all down, take notes, make bad sketches, and really just lean into the unknown areas. This is how I learned the technical rules of art making and then methodically break them to find a unique style or perspective. And this is really helpful because I really love to use traditional materials like charcoal and oil paint and then use them in ways that I haven't seen other people using them before, and that for me is what I think is unique about my art and my techniques, is I'm using these ancient materials in a really contemporary way. The next essential thing to think about before you start any artwork is experimentation. This is different to the research phase. This is where I take everything from the previous 2 stages and just start somewhere. Get all your expensive supplies and let yourself fall into the flow. Here you can bring anything and everything to the canvas, and soon you'll start to see what's working will become very evident, and you can move through this phase quite literally throwing everything at the wall, and you'll see what sticks, and you can take those things into your next artworks. The most important thing is to get the ball rolling and to fall into momentum. I have found that good art loves momentum. If you can fall into a routine of creating consistently for solid blocks of time, you will naturally improve and start to fall into your artistic flow, which is quite honestly the best state of being, and I absolutely love this feeling. It's like nothing else in the world. The next essential thing to think about before you start any artwork is composition, and this principle is an overarching value that I'm constantly thinking about and contemplating while preparing for a new artwork. For me, it starts with the reference. I draw and paint all my artworks from images that I take myself with friends and models, and this is such a tricky part of my process because my paintings and drawings rely so heavily on the photographic reference. This is where I first start thinking about composition and where I begin to think about how the body will translate into an artwork and eventually how it will interact with its space. And this process really influences all the decisions that I make throughout the artwork, as I'm constantly checking in with my end goal and gently bringing up the artwork with soft layers and details. And then after I put my canvas or paper on the wall, I will often mix up a base. For my paintings, I use a burnt umber wash, and then for my drawings, I use an acrylic wash with ink and acrylic paint. But I generally put one layer down mindlessly and see where the pigment runs, and then I'll often sit back after this first layer with a coffee and I just kind of stare at the blank canvas, trying to envision the new artwork and the composition. And then I'll flick through my reference options and I'll go with whatever feels like the strongest option. This is something that you really can't change later on, and the rest of the artwork kind of hangs on this initial lock-in of the composition. So you've really got to kind of choose what you want to draw people's eye to and how you want the body to move around the canvas and how you want it to sit in the frame. And this is quite tricky, but once you get an eye for it, you'll see what works and what feels a little bit clunky. Those 4 phases of inspiration, research, experimentation, and composition are the top 4 things that spring to mind at the moment, and they're the most important things for me. There really is no right or wrong way to make art, and my process will be completely different to someone else's. But I really hope that this helped you to think about your own process, and maybe you can incorporate some of these things into your own practice. I really appreciate you guys supporting my art, and I wouldn't be here without you. Make sure that you subscribe to my channel and leave me a comment. I love hearing from you guys. I will see you guys in the next video. Mwah.